Here we are, the video everybody has all been waiting for. UnderTheMayo's God of War Ragnarok video, and what else can I say? That's the intro. You know who it is already. It's Mitsune Nika. Welcome back to another video. Let's get into this. I just want to say, before we get into the video though, I'm going to tell you guys right now that it's not actually as bad as I expected it to be. It still has some pretty bad moments and some very glaring moments as well, especially the part where he talks about Atreus in a certain scene with him that he still thinks was directed at him, and even addressed once again in a later video about Atreus. For some odd reason, he thinks that Santa Monica, just looked at his darn review and his review only, I guess, and made an entire scene addressing him and his criticism towards Atreus. Like, they really went out of their way to spend possibly thousands, if not millions of dollars just to create this one scene right here addressing UnderTheMayo and his criticisms like he's the only reviewer that matters. He even goes out of his way to say that his video on God of War 2018 is one of the most critical videos on that game, and that there's no way that the devs at Santa Monica Studios didn't see it and thought to themselves, hey, maybe we should make a little inside joke about this reviewer who criticized one of our characters from the game and a moment with him. And maybe it wasn't supposed to like leave the office or like leave development or anything, but we'll probably just leave it in anyway, and it'll be just like an inside joke with us. I don't even know what to say with UnderTheMayo. But anyway, let's get into the video. Enough digressing.
In April of 2019, I released what is now the most infamous negative review of the God of War reboot, and the following year I expanded on it with a second part focusing on specific issues and what I believe to be the motive behind certain creative changes. The lead up to God of War Ragnarok on my end has been a constant stream of people asking if I expect to hate it or if I think it's going to be better. How could I possibly make a follow-up that lives up to that original video in just a few weeks when that video took me a year? Well, all I can do is try. This is how God of War Ragnarok was ruined. While my initial trailer reaction certainly skewed towards the negative side, as I was disappointed to see that not much had changed, I have honestly been excited for the release of Ragnarok.
You serious?
I'm still gonna play it, but I'm not excited for it anymore. And I was excited. For as many criticisms I had for the last game, I knew they could do something that would make both fans and critics happy.
You know what? I could just leave the video off right here and you guys would already know that the rest of this video is still pretty terrible, even if there are some good bits in it. And that UnderTheMayo is the biggest hypocrite ever, like always, on this YouTube platform, at least when it comes to the gaming side of things. But that's what you guys came here for, was to see me respond to UnderTheMayo's God of War Ragnarok video, so I'm here to deliver.
I stayed away from any other previews. I only heard bits here and there about changes made to the combat system. They were touting the new verticality the game offers. There was supposed to be more enemy variation.
Oh my god, I hate how he always talks about how, oh, well, there was a bunch of resource management in the older games, especially God of War 1, when that's not even entirely the case. Yes, after some fights, you did have to find health and magic from chests and everything, but that wasn't always the case. Certain enemies that you would perform takedowns and glory kills on would refill you with health orbs or magic orbs. Like, I'm literally replaying God of War 2, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And yes, sometimes, when I can't do that to enemies and get health back, I do have chests and everything to just open up to refill my health and magic. But, like, it wasn't always just resource managing. Oh my goodness. I get it though. I do feel like something like that would be much better, and I also get your point about the jumping. I don't have too much of an issue with it, but I definitely see why a lot of people would. I do think that's pretty much a downgrade and that they should bring jumping back. But I don't want to hear you go on and on and on about how, oh, you can't jump in God of War Ragnarok still either, or do all these darn crazy aerial combos and stuff. Like, come on.
So before I start talking about what this game does right and wrong, I want to say that I'm not going to be repeating too much of what I've already said. I will get into certain familiar territory with things like the camera, but I'm not here to complain endlessly that you can't jump. Yes, I still hold the same view that no aerial combat options ends up limiting the game significantly. Yes, it's still awkward to see areas you should be able to jump to, but you can't. Yes, I still think this game's combat would be far more interesting with a resource management system like the originals, where you have to find magic instead of it being on a cooldown.
Oh my god, I hate how he always talks about how, oh, well, there was a bunch of resource management in the older games, especially God of War 1, when that's not even entirely the case. Yes, after some fights, you did have to find health and magic from chests and everything, but that wasn't always the case. Certain enemies that you would perform takedowns and glory kills on would refill you with health orbs or magic orbs. Like, I'm literally replaying God of War 2, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And yes, sometimes, you know, when I can't do that to enemies and get health back, I do have chests and everything to just open up to refill my health and magic. But, like, it wasn't always just resource managing. Oh my goodness. I get it though. You know, I do feel like something like that would be much better, and I also get your point about the jumping, you know. I don't have too much of an issue with it, but I definitely see why a lot of people would. I do think that's pretty much a downgrade in that they should bring jumping back. But I don't want to hear you go on and on and on about how, oh, you can't jump in God of War Ragnarok still either, or do all these darn crazy aerial combos and stuff. Like, come on.
I am also not going to talk about how this game doesn't have a combo meter, because the problem was never that there wasn't a combo meter. The problem was the lack of any effective system at all to encourage experimentation.
Alright, okay, you know what? Once again, you're over here lying. Okay, you're being a darn hypocrite. When literally in your God of War 2018 video, where I showed in one of my videos towards you, you said that not having a combo meter was one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problems with the combat.
And as you're fighting, you get XP at random. This is perhaps my greatest complaint about the game. There's no reason to play with any style, and no reason to keep your offense going, because there is no combo meter. No combo meter to reward you for playing well and playing flashy. The only objective in new God of War is to kill all the enemies as quickly and efficiently as possible. It makes the combat so dull and repetitive and limited, because the XP I'm earning is not dependent on how well I perform.
The way an XP rewarding combo meter can. Now there is a good system, it just isn't a combo meter, and we'll get into that soon. Ragnarok has been the most mixed and inconsistent gaming experience I've ever had. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the amazing, and the terrible. Perhaps we had better start from the beginning. I picked the second highest difficulty, Give Me No Mercy, because I wanted a very challenging combat experience, but I wasn't fully prepared for pure suffering on the very highest difficulty because I knew this was already going to be a very long game, and after I finish it, I can replay it on the highest difficulty, better understanding the combat. We start the game, and the first 10 minutes is a bunch of cutscenes and a driving section with button prompt QTEs as Freya comes for her revenge. It's fine, I was expecting this. It's nice that you can actually fail these QTEs and die if you're not paying attention. I took that as a good sign, and at least we aren't slowly dragging our feet as we carry a log this time. Unfortunately, the rest of this sequence is completely fake. You can steer the sled, but it's unnecessary. You can just keep your hand off the controller and the sled auto-steers for you. Coming off the sled, I noticed an immediate improvement. Roll the clip.
Can I swing this axe on my back? No. Wouldn't want to let the player break the immersion of this walking scene.
Alright, time to test it. Get off the sled, take control of Kratos, and wow, would you look at that? I'm actually allowed to press buttons and see what they do. This was a criticism very specific to my video, and this change is something else I saw as a good sign. They're not forcing me to walk around unable to see what my character can do until they say so. There's no enemies here, but it doesn't matter. I want to see what the buttons do, and they let me, so thank you.
Okay, I'm actually going to agree with you on that point right there. Giving the player, you know, complete, or at least, you know, most control and functions right at the start of the game as soon as you get off the sled is very good. You know, that's a very good point right there. And I praise him for doing that because God of War 2018 didn't exactly do that, as you showed in your clip. So yeah, that's very good. There's nothing really much for me to say about that, except that's a very good point.
The moment I was able to experiment with my combat options, I lit up with optimism. One of my principal criticisms with God of War 2018 is that you are so limited with what you can do in the starting hours that it makes combat feel really one-dimensional, especially when you compare it to the originals, which we're going to do right now. Just looking at God of War 1, in the first level you have light attack and heavy attack with 3 different combo enders, block and roll, an air launcher with an air boost follow-up allowing for focused combo damage in the air, an air grab for extended juggles, a ground to air grab for bouncing enemies, and 3 different grab options that gave you fast kills or throwing enemies around to control space. It wasn't an overwhelming amount of options, it was the perfect amount to experiment with as we're learning the game. God of War 2018 stripped away so many of these options without replacing them in the early game, so on your first playthrough all you had were light and heavy attack, axe throw, fists, parry, and dodge. It was also basic. It was hard to get excited about. It led to an absurdly boring troll fight and an almost equally uninteresting boss fight with Brody or whatever his name is, just hacking away and dodging. No other options. And once you did accumulate some more interesting combat options as you're making your way up the mountain, the game was already well on its way to becoming broken due to how badly balanced the RPG mechanics were in combination with a ridiculous amount of runic attack spam and busted Atreus electric arrows.
No, it is not. You listed about 10 different moves that you can do at the start of God of War 1, and God of War 2018 has around the same amount of different things you could do right at the start of the game. So let's go over, the things that you can do at the very start of the game in this area that Under the Mayo is showing. Freezing Throw with the Leviathan Axe, which is a ranged combat in the skill tree. You know, it's weapon level 1. It doesn't require any XP. It's available to you right at the start. And he even does this move in his video. So what you do is you aim and you press R2 for a powerful attack that freezes smaller enemies for a short duration and inflicts heavy damage to all enemies. So how this move works is when you throw this at a weaker enemy, like the Draugr right here at the beginning, it will freeze them instantly on the spot. And you know what you can do after you freeze that enemy? Well, you can run up to them with the shield and bash them and shatter them instantly, or you can kick them into the wall, shatter them instantly, and they'll die. Or you can throw the axe at them again, and then the axe hit them, and if they're near a wall, they will go straight into that wall, and guess what? Shatter instantly and die. Okay, so you have 3 different moves right here that you can do once you're done with Freezing Throw that will automatically just kill the enemy afterwards once you hit them. Now, let's look at another move that's available to you right at the start. This is a sprinting attack with the Leviathan Axe called Leviathan's Fury. While sprinting, you can press R2 to perform a massive leaping attack. What this will do is summon a bunch of ice shards and a shockwave right in front of you when you run and sprint and you press R2, and it will deliver massive damage to all the enemies in front of you. Another move that's available right at the start. Okay, so that's already 5 different things available to you at the start that you can experiment with. Then you also have 2 light attacks available at the start for the 2 weapons that you have. Well, not exactly entirely a weapon, but your fist and shield and the Leviathan Axe. You have 2 light attacks available at the start for you. One with the Leviathan Axe, and then one with the shield and fist. And then you also have a heavy attack that can juggle enemies into the air with the Leviathan Axe. And if you juggle the enemies in the air and then time it right by throwing the axe right at them, you can actually impale them with the axe and make them slam into any wall nearby, and guess what? Also shatter and kill them instantly because they freeze upon contact. That's why. And then for the heavy attack for the shield and fist is your kick, which is something that I already explained what you can do with once you freeze enemies. You can make them hit into a wall and then shatter on impact, killing them instantly. So already that's what, another 3 combat options, so that's 8 so far, but hold on, there's still some more. You also have the stun meter, which he failed to mention right here, where you can build up the stun bar on the enemies, and then once you do, you can perform a brutal execution or takedown, which there are 3 available to you at the start for the Draugr right here. One where you can cleave them in half with the Leviathan Axe, another one where you cleave them straight down the middle with the Leviathan Axe, and then the one where you rush up to them and then you use your fist to rip them apart, as he's shown right here in this video. So there you go. That's already another 4 things that are also available to you at the start and will make you pay attention to the combat and be like, so this is how this and that system works right here, And then you can also kick enemies as well, especially frozen enemies, where if they don't slam into a wall but they're frozen, it will build up a good amount of stun on the stun meter. You know what? Under the Mayo really does not give God of War 2018 enough credit where credit is due, I swear. And then he goes over here to act so disingenuous towards the darn game and completely just lie or just deliver misinformation towards things and make it seem like, the combat in the beginning of the game really does not have that much to it, especially at the start. Like, I get that you love the old games that much, but you're being very disingenuous right now.
Ragnarok, on the other hand, has completely remedied this. Right away, you have access to an axe ability that charges up a heavy freeze attack by holding triangle, applying frost. And we have sprinting attacks. It's amazing how much of a difference this makes in getting started.
You're acting surprised that you have sprinting attacks in God of War Ragnarok when there was already a sprinting attack in God of War 2018 called Leviathan's Fury. I literally just went over this. That's the move right there. You literally just did it. This is the same move available to you in God of War 2018, so why are you over here acting surprised that you have sprint attacks? This is what I'm talking about. You're being so disingenuous to God of War 2018 and making it seem worse than it actually is, especially on the combat side of things. And you're just delivering blatant misinformation. Oh, we have sprinting attacks now. That was already a thing.
In just 1 hour, you get the blades. You have access to 2 blade grapple attacks that bring enemies into you and auto-launches into the air, or charges them with an explosive from far away. The blades can be spun around vertically by mashing triangle for combo juggles, or for swiping attacks or splash damage attacks. This went on to be my favorite attack, due to its ability to interrupt enemy animations and apply burn damage. They definitely want you to use this because they have an area that specifically tells you about it, and it can be significantly upgraded. As soon as you start upgrading skills, you have enough XP to unlock the ability to do extra damage against enemies with elemental effects, further utilizing the new elemental abilities using triangle, encouraging weapon variation, and you can unlock the God of War 3 Hyperion grapple attack that brings you to the enemies, providing a great mobility option. There's like triple the combat options right in the first hour and a half of the game, and I started thinking, wow, some of my biggest problems in 2018 have already been addressed. This is great, this is enjoyable, and maybe I'm just imagining it, but it feels like enemies are hanging in the air a bit longer for combo opportunities. We are quickly introduced to the new vertical combat option, Death from Above, where if you run off a ledge and attack in the air, you come crashing down on the enemies below. It's nice, I appreciate the inclusion, and I appreciate the more vertical design of some of the combat spaces with ledges you can climb up and points to swing from. It's a noble effort at making combat encounters more interesting, but I gotta be honest and say I don't think it adds much to the gameplay. There aren't many fight spaces with these vertical levels, and it basically comes down to fighting on level 1 or going up and fighting on level 2. It's the same thing. Without a jumping option, attempts at verticality are pretty underwhelming. It's fake verticality, and it doesn't do much for me other than remind me of how much better the combat would be if I could jump.
I almost spat out my drink at this fucking part. You know what? I get it, Under the Mayo, okay? I get that them not including a actual jump button, you know, or putting in like, you know, true aerial combat and all that, or whatever the heck you want to talk about, is, you know, just not all that great, and you would much prefer them to just add an ability to jump and just, you know, juggle enemies in the air again while you're in the air, because you can juggle enemies in the air in God of War 2018 and in Ragnarok. You're literally doing it here. But to call this fake verticality is just, it's so fucking dumb, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Really? Fake verticality.
And if I could see, the camera is still just the worst. The video here doesn't really communicate how it feels to play this game, so let's bring it in a bit. A little more, there. That's how it feels to play modern God of War games. Uncomfortable. In a game where enemies are frequently running to your side and behind you, you're steering yourself like a tank and directing your attacks like you're playing a third-person shooter. It's just the worst. It makes so much of the game, combat and exploration, feel so claustrophobic, and it's made infinitely worse by the fact that Kratos can't attack in any direction other than right in front of him. Many viewers of my channel will be familiar with my dislike of melee action where you have to control the camera, but it is far more tolerable in a hack-and-slash game like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry or a brawler like Sifu, where yes, you have to move the camera, but you can also move your character in any direction. If an enemy is to your left, just attack to your left. If an enemy is behind you, do a backwards attack. You don't have to reposition the camera. Ghost of Tsushima did this just fine. Why can't God of War? Here you have to turn the camera towards whoever you're fighting, and it's just as tedious as it was in 2018, if not more so because of some of the new enemies. While I do like their designs, they tend to run all over the place and zoom past you. You have to rely even more on the terrible indicator system to react to colored arrows for enemies off screen. It creates a state of paranoia when you're trying to kill an enemy, but you've got arrows telling you that something is coming, but you have no way of knowing what it is or exactly when it's going to hit, or if it's an unblockable attack, so you just gotta stop what you're doing and reposition yourself just to see. It's so tedious, and it ruins a lot of the combat momentum. When you're fighting a couple enemies that are in your view, things can work pretty well. You can focus on the damage you're doing while being ready to react to any incoming attack, to dodge, parry, or interrupt. That's when combat feels the best, but you can still end up struggling to target who you want when the enemies start moving about. And the problem isn't that it's mechanically hard to focus on one enemy, it's that so many enemies will surround you and attack you from behind, so the combat becomes about managing your view more than feeling the energy of the fight. If you put yourself in the middle of the action, you're gonna have to be flipping around to cover your ass.
Alright, look, Under the Mayo, I agree with you right there on that point about the camera. You made a good point right there about how you shouldn't have to reposition yourself towards someone else that you're trying to, you know, attack and everything, as Kratos in God of War 2018 and Ragnarok. In that the camera should be able to just move with you. You shouldn't have to just reposition yourself. It should be something like how it is in like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry or even Ghost of Tsushima, which also did it very good. But this point right here, man, about the darn indicators and everything, clearly you're noticing it right there. Not only that, it's literally glowing bright red and it's blinking just so you can see it. How are you not able to notice this? Okay, I can get that for others. You know, these indicators could be pretty terrible, or that, you know, they probably can't notice something that's pretty darn small, but it's literally right there in front of you, just blinking and glowing. And clearly you're noticing it right here in this video, and yet you still don't dodge out of the darn way.
And there's a horrible bug where after you do specific animations, if you try to quick turn, the game will forget the block input and instead read the down input first, causing you to come out of your quick turn animation with your fists instead of your weapon. I bet I just cleared up something for a lot of players wondering why they suddenly weren't holding their weapon. You can test this yourself. Pick up something from the ground or run and do an axe drop and hold block as you're coming out of the animation and start tapping down to quick turn. You'll see that your weapon is gone after the quick turn finishes. Infuriating. Watch here, holding block during the end of the execution, Kratos starts pulling out his blades instead of blocking like I'm telling him to. Next, the down input causes him to pull out the spear, and then the game recognizes the block button I've been holding for the past 2 seconds and lets me quick turn, now with the wrong weapon. The controls just feel unresponsive sometimes, on top of the general clunkiness this game has. There were a lot of times where I hit the weapon weapon switch button, but nothing happened. You also can't switch weapons while blocking. If you have the axe out and you're blocking, you have to let go of block and then switch weapons, when you really should just be able to come out of block with a different weapon. I guess because it's not realistic, but you can switch weapons while rolling, and that's not realistic, so what the fuck. You also can't run while switching weapons. If you're running and you switch, Kratos stops running, which is just terrible and awkward. There's just a general lack of input buffering that makes things feel wrong. If you press the buttons to deactivate Spartan Rage during an animation, it doesn't cause Spartan Rage to stop once the attack finishes. You have to wait until Kratos stops moving, leaving you just standing there burning your meter for nothing. And the worst is when you throw your axe, but then you do a takedown animation and it shows Kratos with the axe, and then you go back to not having the axe, but you just saw yourself with the axe. So you try to do a magic attack, but it doesn't work because you haven't recalled the axe yet. The axe that you just saw in your hand, it's confusing. Getting back to the camera, in a way I think they're aware of the camera issues because a lot of the game is actually focused on one-on-one boss fights, and that's where this game shines. The best part of God of War 2018 was the Valkyrie fights. Well, really only on New Game Plus, because in the regular game you could just ruin expand them to death even on the highest difficulty. 2018 only had 3 boss fights in the campaign, and they mostly sucked. The first Brody fight sucked, the giant dragon was nothing more than throwing balls at him and hacking away at his toes, and the final Brody fight was okay, I guess. The trolls were everywhere, the first one sucked and the rest of them sucked too. They know this, that's why there's an awesome joke troll appearance where Kratos just immediately kills it, sending a clear message to fans that they know the trolls sucked and they won't be appearing in this game, except for a few appearances later in side missions, and that's fine. By that time they die super fast. It's nice to see Santa Monica have a sense of humor about their game's faults.
Woo, boy, god dang, man. A lot of that sounded like a bunch of fucking nitpicks. While some of the points about the bugs and everything were actually really good points, the rest of those just sounded like a bunch of goddamn nitpicks under the mail. Like, Jesus Lord, dude. Like, do you actually like this game? I mean, because you're saying how you think that it's better than God of War 2018, man, but then you're over here complaining about minuscule stuff like this, dude, and trying to pass it off as legitimate criticism. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but do anybody else really see much of an issue with some of the things that he's saying right here?
This time around, the number of boss fights in the main campaign of Ragnarok is truly impressive. There must have been, what, 10, maybe more? Plus dozens of optional fights. And now that you've got the spear, you have more ways to engage in combat. I don't enjoy the spear that much as a normal weapon, but I like the runic attacks. When a boss flies away from me, I chase his ass down with the spear, and it's so satisfying. Boss fights are awesome because you finally don't have to worry about enemies attacking you from off-screen, and you can just focus on fighting an interesting opponent. In Ragnarok, it isn't 10 minutes before you fight a boss, the bear, and it's cool. It shows off the defensive mechanics of the game really well, way better than 2018's introductory troll. And after the next cutscenes, we get to battle Thor. They're really opening the game strong. It's like how God of War 3 had you taking on Poseidon as your first enemy. Combat feels better, camera problems are minimal for a while due to the multiple one-on-one boss fights, and we've already met both Odin and Thor. We meet up with Mimir, and I love that he's just living in Kratos' cabin now. I guess he just sits on the table all day. We're treated to a dream sequence where we see Kratos' wife like we should have in the first game. I never cared about the mission to spread his dead wife's ashes because we never got to see her or see how Kratos feels about her. Now we do. Too bad I find her quite unlikable. She reminds me of this person who I strongly dislike. She even has a moment of dialogue that's exactly like this character. But I really like the portrayal of Odin and Thor. They feel very authentic to this world. I like seeing Thor as a large drinking Viking, and I particularly like seeing Odin as just a normal guy. He's not some commanding presence, he's just the guy in charge. A normal old man who has authority and cares only about his control. I'm no expert on Norse mythology. I'm sure there have been many interpretations of these characters. If anyone is upset by this interpretation, I'm not saying you're wrong, but after all the years of only seeing the Marvel versions, this was refreshing. And then we start the central conflict of God of War Ragnarok. Atreus is searching for Tyr because he wants to know more about the giants and his destiny as Loki, and Odin wants him to stop. Kratos says no, Odin goes on to manipulate them both, and that's about it. This is Atreus' story, and the story of everyone else. This game cares little for the character of Kratos, as he is relegated to being a man following his son's reckless ambitions. This is not Kratos' mission, so much like the last game, I found it very hard to care about what's happening. Not liking Atreus certainly didn't help. In the first cutscene, Atreus is already yelling at us. It's incredible that they start this game with Atreus whining.
I honestly don't know what UnderTheMayo's issue is with Atreus. Maybe because it reminds him of himself when he was a kid. Maybe he was this annoying or something and he sees Atreus in him. I don't know. That's the only logical conclusion for me, man, because he seems to always take shots at Atreus whenever he can. And he's going to be doing it in this video as well when it comes to the story part like he did in God of War 2018. To the point that he actually thinks that the devs went out of a way to make an entire scene for him in this game with Atreus that addressed UnderTheMayo's criticism of him in his God of War 2018 video.
And it's not about the dialogue. I understand they have to set up character conflict. It's about the delivery. Atreus' issues could have been delivered in a much more conversational, non-shrill, non-bitchy way, but the way they write this character is abrasive and annoying. Now look, Atreus isn't as bad as he was in the first game because he's not a whiny 8-year-old brat.
He wasn't even 8 years old in the first game. He was about 11. What are you talking about, man?
He's a little older now. His voice isn't as irritating. I tolerate him more this time around. I wish they had made him older, like early 20s. Yes, I'm aware that Fimbulwinter only lasts a few years, but you may recall that this is a series that plays with the concept of time. Kratos opened portals in God of War 2 that took him to the past. Just in the last game, he entered a portal in Alfheim where he experienced time differently than Atreus. If Santa Monica really wanted to, they could have easily found a way to age up Atreus by having him get lost in some time portal and pop out the other end in his 20s, and I really wish they had. By the way, I refuse to believe that this part isn't a jab at my video.
Here we go. This is the scene that I was talking about. He seriously thinks that this was directed at him for some fuck all reason.
In my original video, in the section where I talked about how much I hate Atreus, there's a part where I talk about his annoying way of speaking, and I show a montage of him saying whatever.
This kid even says whatever when he gets pissy.
Whatever. It says, don't wake him. Whatever.
And then we have this part in Ragnarok.
Whatever. Hey, what's going on? Can you tell me where I am?
It is a very clever way of taking a dig at me, I must admit. I'm sure some of the developers have seen my video by this point, and if they were going to respond in any way, this is a brilliant way to do it. I approve, I love it, I laughed really hard when it happened. I suppose it could be coincidence, but I doubt it.
The developers do not give a single fuck about your opinion, UnderTheMayo. I highly doubt they made this scene for you at all. or made this scene for anyone addressing any kind of criticism about Atreus in the previous game, okay? Considering that your video only has a little over 100k views on it, and you're not the only YouTuber who has made 100k plus views shitting on God of War 2018. Come on now.
Anyway, I still don't like this kid. I don't like walking around with him, and I don't like how much of the game is dedicated to him. I do enjoy the moments where Kratos expresses his feelings for him, but that's because I care about Kratos. Seeing him smile as he witnesses Atreus becoming independent put a smile on my face as well, and it's one of my favorite moments in the entire series. I don't like his kid, but I feel for Kratos, and I am moved by the scenes where we see how much he loves his son. And some of my favorite story moments come from these interactions between Kratos and Atreus. But there's something off about his face, and the way he talks immediately spoils the mood of dramatic moments. Things that should be serious in tone are undermined by his nonchalant attitude. Hello. I lost count of how many times I got absorbed by the story following these legitimately interesting characters when Atreus has to butt in and make some comment and ruin the whole scene. It's really frustrating because I like everyone else a lot, and I can easily imagine a God of War 2018 and Ragnarok where Atreus is not a part of any of this.
See what I mean, everybody? He really has it out for Atreus like he did in God of War 2018, man. I don't get what his deal is with this kid. I get you find him annoying and everything, and that's fair, you know. That's all right. You can find him annoying. You can even find him a little bitchy and everything, but come on now. You're dedicating the entire parts right here just solely to shit on Atreus for, I don't know, simply because you don't like him and you wish he was gone from the game. We get it, man. Like, it's the same song and dance with you. We get that you hate Atreus. Can you please stop talking about it and get into legit actual criticism of the game instead of focusing on one character you constantly dislike? This is like somebody who's always constantly complaining about Jar Jar Binks, man. Like, okay, man, we get it. His voice is annoying or whatever, but just please shut up about it.
Kratos could have just been a lonely man in the woods dealing with his demons when he comes across Freya after he wounds her pig during a hunt. And there we go. Atreus is searching for what it means to be Loki, eventually going on to try to stop Ragnarok, and Kratos is just along for the ride. Isn't that a compelling narrative for our beloved main character? Toss in a few flashback scenes with his dead wife where they talk about how he's scared to have a baby, and I guess you have a story of some kind. The story depends entirely on Atreus, and unfortunately he's the Jar Jar Binks of God of War. Early on, you can just tell that this little puñetas is going to be the cause of every fucking problem we encounter. And he is.
Really now? Because as far as I know, Atreus' fuck-ups were wholly because he was trying to do things in a good nature, you know? He was trying to prevent Ragnarok. Even though he did have some screw-ups throughout the entire game, overall his intentions was good, you know? He may be the god of mischief and everything, but he's completely different from how he is in the Norse mythology. I mean, come on now. He went out of his way to try and save all the 9 realms, especially those that were being held in oppression by Odin and them, and also try to prevent Ragnarok so none of them could die. But no, he's the sole entire reason and the problems for everything that happens in this game. Because UnderTheMayo's said so.
Everything bad that happens because of him. He sneaks out at night to go on his own adventures, always disobeying orders. Everything he does is in service of himself, and everyone suffers because of it. Hey, that sounds like Kratos' behavior in the old games, doesn't it?
In service of himself. So let's forget about the part where he literally tries to prevent Ragnarok just so he can save all the 9 realms, including Odin and Thor as well, you know. He tries to get them to stop multiple times and tells them that he doesn't want war and that he's seeking for a peaceful option. But no, he's doing all this for his sole benefit. He's totally not trying to save anybody else, man. He's totally not trying to save others that are being oppressed and, you know, are destined to die in this godly event that is soon to come upon them.
Yeah, but the difference is that when it's Kratos doing it, he's the main character, we are sympathetic to his story, he's actually likable and interesting, and his games have a fun, not-so-serious tone to them.
He wasn't exactly likable in God of War 2 or 3, you know. We just understood his ambitions and the reasons for his vengeance and everything, and we supported him in those endeavors. Because we saw all the stuff that he went through. We saw how he was betrayed and backstabbed, you know, all the darn trials and tribulations that he went through. But I wouldn't consider somebody who goes out of his way to slaughter all those in his path to vengeance likable. We just understood his motivations and we supported him because we understand how deeply flawed he is as a character and all the betrayals and stuff that he went through. There's a reason why he's a deeply flawed character, you know. Not that that's bad or anything, but he wasn't exactly likable, especially in God of War 3. where he literally wound up destroying the entire world, you know, or at least the Greek world, and he even said at the end of the game, "What have I done?" And then he released hope onto everyone just to give humanity a fighting chance again.
Here, every moment following Atreus is boring and annoying, and it's telling that the most compelling moments of the story come from characters rightfully scolding him for his selfishness and his foolishness, for being the burden he is. It's glorious.
I gave you everything. My skills, my friendship, my home, my secrets, my treasures, and you just kept taking. And now what have I got? We. There is no we. There's only you. No matter what the cost. So what you can do is get the fuck out of my sight.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. I could watch an hour of that.
Under the Mayo is really out here getting fucking euphoric feelings from seeing Atreus get scolded by other characters. This is how much he hates Atreus, everybody. Really weird, you know, just really cringy and just really, really dumb, man. This is all you want to see, don't you, huh? You just want to see Atreus get, you know, belittled and freaking taught a lesson and all this, you know, get yelled at and berated simply because you hate this character that much. Absolutely pathetic.
The campaign is constantly interrupted by Atreus sections because, oh yes, this time around, Santa Monica Studio has made it clearer than ever that what they really want to do is make the Atreus game. You take control of Atreus like 7 times, I think, and it's almost always bad.
What? I'm sorry. Hold on, I just yelled into the mic for that. But, what? It's clear because they included an Atreus section in this game to add more content and add more story beats, you know? That all they really want to do is just make an Atreus game. I mean, that point would probably be valid if all you did for most of the game was play as Atreus, but that's not even what you do. You're still mostly playing as Kratos. There's only a few sections where you're Atreus. Lord, grant me the strength right now to finish this video. You know what? I said this video wasn't that bad, but actually, after skimming back through it, it's worse than I remember it being. It's always somehow worse than I remember it being. I said the same thing with the Synthetic Man video. I was like, wait, was it actually as bad as I thought it was? I go back through it, and it is you heard it right here, everybody. Santa Monica Studios just wants to make the Atreus game. You know, because they included a section where you play as him for a bit and some other sections. That just means they want to make an Atreus God of War game. I don't know how the hell Under the Mayo comes up with these leaps of logic, but I'm done. Okay, I'm through with it. Let's carry on.
The first mission is kinda alright. It's interesting to see how this character moves and fights. The remarkable thing is that he plays much better than Kratos in this camera style. Because like I've said before, this camera style is made for shooters, not melee action games. This is how Resident Evil 4 is supposed to control, not God of War. Atreus is so agile and he has strong long-range options. It's like the game was made for him. The first time you fight with Atreus, it's actually liberating compared to how clunky and immobile Kratos is. I mean, he didn't used to be this way, but, you know, immersion, I guess. Atreus can shoot lots of arrows, inflict major stun, dive out of the way while shooting, knock enemies on the ground while in combo. He's pretty cool to control. That is until you realize that almost all of the combat encounters with him are heavily tuned in his favor. He recovers a lot of health from just one pickup, he does a lot of damage, and most of the fights are just super tame. They're pushovers. I'm trying to figure out why they did this. Why make Atreus so powerful and brain dead most of the time? Are they trying to make us think he's really cool by making him kick so much ass easily? Most of the combat here is trivialized and it's boring.
You know, I love how you're saying that he does a lot of damage, and yet look at that damage you're doing from each shot. And even once you did the execution stun move right there, you still had to juggle the enemy in the air and hit him a few more times and then finally kill him. But no, Atreus is apparently overpowered in these sections right here where you play as him Under the Mayo. It's like, did you even look at your own gameplay clip before you put this in the fucking video, man? Like, dude, you're refuting your own points in this video. I don't even have to say anything right here. Apparently he's overpowered, and yet it's still taking you forever to kill one single Draugr. I'm sorry, not Draugr. I believe that's a frost giant enemy right there. But still, it's taking you forever to kill one of the weaker basic enemies. That was even a weakened basic enemy in God of War 2018 once you finally went to Helheim.
Playing one mission was okay, I can do that. But mission 2 is the worst part of the game. It is, in no exaggeration, an hour and a half of unskippable cutscenes, following dogs and talking to yourself, walking around and listening to a girl talk, skipping stones on the lake, occasionally fighting wimpy enemies that don't stand a chance, looking at paintings, carrying seeds, talking about paintings, walking, opening chests, talking, riding a bull slowly through the marshes, bad combat, talking, picking up apples, riding through the marshes some more, talking, running around, riding a bull, talking, fighting bugs in the dark, picking up more apples, walking around, talking, more bad combat, playing the most pathetic and uninteresting boss fight in the game, running through the fields as a dog in a part that plays itself for you since you don't even have to press the analog stick, and listening to the most annoying sound ever recorded in human history. An hour and a half of this? You really think Atreus is so interesting that we're gonna be happy to put down everything and spend 90 minutes doing this shit? Fuck off, Santa Monica, fuck off! You know who you remind me of? These people. Their heads are so far up their own asses. It's the only explanation for this.
You know, I'm not even going to defend this mission right here, which is called Ironwood, because a lot of people have said that this mission is objectively the worst in the game, and it's easily the worst Atreus section, and it's one of the sole reasons why they sometimes feel like they don't even want to go back through this game. And it actually does seem that bad. But for him to sit here and act like this last part where she was over here doing some darn, I don't know, some freaking bird call or something, is easily one of the worst or most annoying sounds in human history is just ridiculous. You spamming it like that is the only thing that's making it sound annoying. Like, and then it's also funny right here seeing UnderTheMayo get so pissed that he tells Santa Monica Studios to just fuck off. Yeah, man, because apparently you love their game so darn much, right? This is how a fan of their darn games would act. Oh, man.
It's the only explanation for the next Atreus section, where all you do is walk around Asgard listening to people talk for 15 minutes after pretending to climb the Asgard wall. Yes, pretending to climb. When I saw this wall and heard Atreus say he was going to climb it, I thought, no, there's no way they're going to make me fake platform up this giant-ass wall.
He calls this fake platforming because you can't jump off and die. Like, come on, man. Seriously, right here? You're literally climbing up the darn wall, but because of the simple fact that you can't fall off and die or intentionally jump off and die because, I don't know, I guess you want to dick around with the game's mechanics is absolutely ridiculous to me, man.
But oh yes, they are. Acting like we're supposed to be impressed by this epic quest, which I'm sure plenty of people fell for. Oh wow, look how high I'm climbing. It's so dangerous to be doing this. But for me, it's more like they were openly laughing in the face of everyone who had an issue with the fake platforming and boring climbing sections of God of War 2018. They make you climb this massive wall, but you can't fall off. There's no way to grab the wrong section or lose your grip, or even voluntarily walk off the fucking edge, because this game refuses to allow any kind of consequence outside of direct combat and QTE moments. Even Uncharted, the game that arguably started all this cinematic gaming nonsense and easiest piss auto platforming trend, let you make mistakes and fall to your death. There's gotta be some kind of actual danger to platforming sections, or there's no reason for them to exist. And just to insult us a little more, they say, oh, are you getting bored with pretending to climb a wall? Here, shoot some bubbles. Isn't that fun? Now get back to climbing. The fact that you literally cannot fall completely destroys the illusion of danger and turns this entire section into a pointless series of holding directions on the controller and hitting circle when it says so. It is awful. It's the kind of moment that truly reflects the times we're in. Because 20 years ago, a moment like this would have been a 90-second cutscene where we get some epic camera angles and dramatic music showing an exciting montage of Atreus scaling the wall. Short, to the point, fun to watch. But we're in the age of cinematic gaming now, so every single moment of climbing and walking has to be some fake interactive sequence that's not only unskippable, but is dragged out due to playing out in real time since it isn't subject to editing. It's uninteresting to watch because there's no intentional camera direction, and it's immersion breaking because people can be talking about the most serious thing in the world while you're digging around with the camera. This is why the unbroken single camera style of this game is an utter failure, because it leaves zero opportunity for editing, which murders the pacing, and far more than it did in the last game because there's just so much more of it. This game is incredibly long, which doesn't have to be a bad thing, but there's like 20 times the amount of unskippable cutscenes, and they're so long, and there's so much walking around and talking. And that's not the only thing that ruins the pacing of this game. They also ruin it intentionally by placing a traversal puzzle after what feels like every combat encounter. For the majority of the campaign, and even in many side missions, the game is terrified to give you more than one combat encounter. Large portions of the game are fighting 3 or 4 enemies, and then spending the next 5 to 10 minutes walking, talking, climbing, watching cutscenes, and solving puzzles. And then maybe you get to fight another 3 or 4 enemies before going through the whole process again. It isn't until much later in the game that they finally start consistently delivering combat. Their world and story is so important that we have to take a break after almost every fight, no matter how basic and unsatisfying it may have been. Because the combat encounters are generally unsatisfying for significant chunks of the game, due to how infrequent they are and how frustrating the camera can be. Oh, and some people gave me crap for exaggerating the camera problems when you get close to walls. Yeah, I don't think so. This stuff happens plenty, and it sucks every time.
I'm gonna tell you the same thing that I told Synthetic, man. Maybe if you're over here blocking an attack and it's pushing you towards the fucking wall, how about you just roll out of the darn way? Or if you're dealing with an unblockable attack, which literally shows you indicators for it, hence the red circle, why do you keep trying to block it then? You're supposed to roll out the way, but no. When the camera is pushing you back because you're constantly dealing with an attack that causes knockback to you and pushes you towards the wall, you want to sit here and complain and act like it's the camera's fault that you're over here up against the wall and it's hard for you to fucking see because you don't want to roll out the darn way and you don't want to play the game smart.
I'm not saying all the combat encounters are bad. Some fights are okay. Sometimes there's interactable objects to use against enemies, like giant rocks or throwing the axe into crystals to reflect into them. It makes things feel a bit more dynamic. And when it feels like you have more control over the situation, namely by keeping things in camera, fights can feel good from time to time. So it's not all bad. I mean, anytime you have to fight worms or floating bubbles, it sucks. But some of these fights are pretty good, and it's almost always the boss fights. The opening levels present you with multiple boss fights. The bear, Thor, the huntress, which was pretty fun to fight, the Dreki, of which you fight multiple later. 2 enemies at once really is the maximum that this camera style can handle. The game delivers boss fights pretty steadily throughout the campaign and open world, and I honestly enjoyed nearly all of them. There are beefed up mini bosses scattered around, and there's these great optional berserker boss fights that can be very challenging. Some of these guys took me a couple hours to take down, and it forced me to get good. It was the best part of the game. If I had one criticism for the boss fights, it's that I wish there were more puzzle elements involved. Having to use pieces of the environment or something like that. I always come back to God of War 1, where you had to stun the hydras and then climb up to impale them so they stayed down while you went after the big guy up top. Stuff like that is fun and makes boss fights more than just block and attack encounters.
I'm not gonna lie, that's actually a very good idea right there, and I wish that future God of War games going forward would do that again, you know, including combat puzzles into boss fights. Anybody remembers the boss fight against the Minotaur from God of War 1? That's easily still one of the greatest boss fights in the entire God of War series, and I'm not even kidding with that. And it was the perfect mixture of combat puzzles mixed with traditional boss fight.
Bosses have unique attacks that you have to adapt to, and one thing I love is that they made me think more about what runic attacks I wanted to use. See, in the last game, I complained about it giving me so many runic attacks when I can only use one for each runic slot, and none of it mattered anyway because the game was so broken. This time, due to much better combat balance and better enemy design, I was thoughtfully exploring my options to pick the right runic attack for the situation, something I really enjoyed. Sometimes a runic attack I like using would leave me too vulnerable in a fight, so I'd switch it out. So the problem was never that there were too many runic attacks in the last game, it's that there were so many while feeling like it didn't matter in the first place. This time, it does, and it feels good to have options, especially since it feels like I'm not breaking the game with any of them. The RPG elements have been toned down and slowed down in terms of how they're introduced. The whole green, blue, purple rarity system we see in every game today isn't plastered all over the armor page, so I'm actually looking at these different pieces instead of going directly to colors. Wonderful, now I don't have to think Fortnite while playing God of War.
What? How the hell did you already think Fortnite anyway in God of War 2018 by seeing color-coded yellow, blue, orange, legendary armor and stuff? That stuff didn't even come from Fortnite. It came from RPG dungeon crawlers like Diablo and Torchlight and stuff. What are you talking about, man?
I can just hear people complaining already. Where's my epic purple axe handle, bro? The biggest change is the removal of enchantments. Sweet Lord in heaven, they actually took out the enchantments. 2018 buried you in like hundreds of these things that gave you little stat boosts, and it was exhausting. And you couldn't sell them, so they just sat there. They're gone now, because we don't need to be thinking about equipable enchantments as we're figuring out the armor system and the combat. Instead, what they've done is consolidated all these enchantments into an amulet that you find much later in the game. It has 9 slots, only one open at first, where you can put enchantments that you start finding. And as you play the game, you'll be able to repair more slots to have more enchantments equipped. And there aren't dozens of crappy +2 strength enchantments lying around, they all have significant clear uses. Introducing this later in the game instead of in the beginning is a fantastic change. It doesn't feel overwhelming, it feels like a natural extension of this game's progression, and I enjoyed working with it. Being able to equip 3 enchantments of the same type to get a bonus perk was also a very nice touch.
Speak for yourself. I wish they kept the enchantments and just reworked them and everything, because there was this Easter egg in God of War 2018, and for those of you who have still not figured it out yet and are playing through God of War 2018 or plan to, then just skip this little part right here because I'm going to spoil this Easter egg for you. But you could unlock the Infinity Gauntlet by doing this cool side quest, and then you could put 3 or 4 of the Infinity Stones that you could find throughout the game by doing various like different side quests and tasks, and then put them inside of this you can put them as enchantments inside of this little armor piece, and then you could use it to do this cool ass attack, and it was really sweet. This is why I wish they brought enchantments back, and you know what they should have done as well? Brought back that Infinity Gauntlet type of item called, I think it was called the Gauntlet of the Ages, and then make it to where you can get all 7 Infinity Stones.
Speaking of things that we should have the ability to disable, NPC hints. Your partner regularly yells at you, telling you to use your shield, telling you to parry an attack, stop standing still, attack an enemy at a certain time, and it's super annoying. I get it, you've got all kinds of players in this game. Yelling advice at them in the middle of combat can remind them of important things they should be doing. But for the love of God, let us disable it. You've got thousands of accessibility options in the menu, and you can't let us play without characters constantly telling us what to do. We've all seen this clip, haven't we?
Oh my god, shut off!
You have his attention now. Don't lose it. Don't just stand there. Move.
Oh my god! I will
I need to get
legit
to
mute the
those
voices. Holy fuck, man.
That's it. Don't relent.
Oh fuck.
Parry that attack.
Oh my god. What is this?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, this is something that I said in my response to Synthetic Man as well and in my other videos, that I also agree that the backseat gaming by the NPCs is really garbage, and that there should be an option to turn it off, considering how they have over like 60 or so freaking accessibility options. And it's still ridiculous that they took advice from Darkside Phil's gaming in order to design their levels and stuff. It's honestly ridiculous. So once again, I also agree with this point that UnderTheMayo's is coming up with.
But what's worse is the puzzle sections. Now, I'm on record for criticizing 2018's puzzles, and while I do think in Ragnarok they're still limited by the lack of platforming, attempts have been made to make puzzles more interesting this time around, using the axe to freeze waterways and direct the water towards wheels to open doors, and the ability to string together runic arrows helps a lot of the puzzles feel like more than just throwing your axe at switches. So yeah, I praise the increase in puzzle variety, but my appreciation for these puzzles is frequently ruined by how often they appear. I like puzzles, okay? Survival horror is my favorite genre, and I love a puzzle that gets me thinking for 10 minutes about what to do. But not in every room, and not when none of them involve combat in an action game. Do people just not remember how much cool puzzle design was involved in the old games? The Minotaur boss wasn't just hitting him, you stunned him and made your way up to the launcher to impale him. There was a part where you had to protect a guy from killing himself while you were fending off monsters. You killed centaurs in a magic circle to unlock a door. You had to move a prisoner up a ramp for a sacrifice while enemies came at you. There was an elevator that would crush you if you didn't kill all the enemies in time. You did executions on sirens to use their voice to break open doors. God of War 3 had a cool section where zombies walk into a wall of energy and convert into large monsters, so you have to keep them away from it while fighting the big guys. This stuff makes the combat more than just strike and defend, with combat-free puzzles in between.
Yeah, once again, I agree with this point right here. I do agree that the combat puzzles in the older game, shake things up a bit, and it also made a lot of, encounters and stuff better. But the only ones that I don't like was the one from God of War 1 where he just said you had to freaking bring the darn prisoner while all these enemies were trying to attack you. I actually hated that one, and I also didn't really like the one in God of War 3 that much where the zombies would turn into like enemies and stuff. But otherwise the combat puzzles in the older games were actually really unique, and they shook things up a bit and made things fresh and new. They were really good. I wish they would do something like that in God of War Ragnarok, and I hope they try and do something like that in the newer games that they're going to be making going forward.
It creates a larger experience, despite it actually being a shorter and linear game. I think it would have been cool to see some kind of puzzle where you have to juggle an enemy over a certain area for a while, and maybe this enemy has to be burning, but it dies quickly. So you have to figure out a way to get it burning with your spinning blade and then launch it and keep it in the air burning before it dies to open a door. Some kind of puzzle that actually teaches combat skills, not just stopping everything to be in a quiet room for several minutes figuring out where to throw your axe. Without combat in any puzzle rooms, the game turns into a slog. God of War Ragnarok has a pacing problem. As I stated before, large amounts of the campaign and some side missions have you fighting a small group of enemies, 2 if you're lucky, and then solving a puzzle in the middle of a bunch of walking, talking, and cutscenes. Alfheim is particularly bad about this, with constant rooms asking you to throw your axe at crystals to open doors. Imagine if instead of all these puzzles, they'd spent more time and resources on better designed combat spaces and some actual vertical combat options. They seem more interested in presenting traversal puzzles to the player than interesting combat scenarios, and the result is that puzzles that should be making me happy because they're well designed are having the opposite effect. I just want to experience the combat some more, but there's a locked door in my way and I gotta spend several minutes trying to figure it out. And right before I do actually figure it out, a character just blurts out the solution, completely unwarranted. Nothing ruins a puzzle like being told the solution right as you're about to get it yourself. Other games have done this way better. I think it was Uncharted where if you need a hint, you could press square and your friend would direct your attention to something. It would be great if they could rework it to be like that, because knowing the puzzles are going to be spoiled for me definitely lessens my drive to want to replay this game. As if I would ever replay Ragnarok.
Of course you wouldn't ever replay Ragnarok or even God of War 2018, because we already know that you don't actually fucking like these games. Yet you pretend to sit here and act like you think these games are good. Anyway, you made a good point right there about all the darn backseat gaming and the fact that the NPCs that you travel with, Atreus and Freya, give you the hints of puzzles. Synthetic Man and a bunch of people have also said that it's a really horrible idea, and I agree with that because nobody likes being told the solution when they're just about to figure it out.
I played 2018 once when it came out, and then 3 more times preparing for my original video. I played it twice on hard, once on extreme, and again on extreme New Game Plus, which is admittedly a much better experience. My plan going into Ragnarok was to play it on the Give Me No Mercy difficulty and then extreme, Give Me God of War. I wanted to get 2 solid playthroughs under my belt for this video, maybe 100%ing one of those playthroughs. But after suffering through so many unskippable cutscenes which last hours, boring as hell tasks where characters ask you to go fetch rocks for them so they can fix machines, and especially the god-awful Atreus levels which also take up hours, I refuse to play this game again. And it's sad because I would really like to just go around fighting all the bosses again, but not if it means I have to go through all that crap. A New Game Plus mode will not help this much because even if it lets us skip cutscenes, there's still hours and hours of walkie-talkie climbing nonsense and unbearable Atreus levels. You think New Game Plus is going to come with an option to skip the Atreus levels? I don't think so. Maybe if I liked the story more, I could tolerate it, but Atreus is simply too much for me. I came to like the other characters. Brock and Sindri had some interesting developments. It was very sad to lose Brock and see Sindri become consumed by hate and ultimately be the one to kill Odin. It was actually a compelling part of the story. The epilogue scene saying goodbye to Brock was moving. Freya dealing with her trauma of being married to Odin was good to learn about. I became interested in Freya's forgiveness of Kratos, and it was wonderful to see them become partners. Actually, the parts playing with Freya are way better than the ones with Atreus. She feels like a much more natural companion. The drama in Thor's family was interesting to me. Really, anything involving anyone other than Atreus, I found myself enjoying.
You know, it'd be funny as heck if when New Game Plus comes out in spring that they don't actually put in any options for you to skip the Atreus level except for hopefully that Ironwood level. And then you get upset about that and then you just go ahead and make a whole new video once again talk about how God of War is ruined part 2 because the New Game Plus sucks and stuff and that they didn't add anything that you wanted in there. Boo-hoo, the game developers didn't pander to me and put in the things that I want. But obviously, I hope they put in the ability to skip cutscenes, which honestly should have been something that's available at launch for pretty much every game, especially story-based ones. I don't know why they did the same thing with 2018. They waited until New Game Plus mode came out. And then we could finally have the option to skip our cutscenes and stuff. It's really dumb. Really, really dumb. But yeah, man, imagine complaining about there being a bunch of cutscenes and story beat moments in a story-based game. And you can't even sit here and make the complaint that, oh, well, it's a movie game, it's a Sony game, so of course they got to do this. The folks getting us in on the story so much, when there's plenty of combat sections and exhilarating and great combat moments in this game, and you even show it.
But Kratos' part in all this, it's still very underwhelming to me. In most of the story, he's relegated to a Mad Max role, where he's not actually the main character in his movies. It's about the people he meets. And that's not a bad way to tell a story, but Kratos is such an interesting character that we've come to love and want to engage with more. I'm really disappointed to see him take a backseat to most of the story. He has his moments, yeah, and ultimately his journey ends up being more entertaining as he eventually becomes leader of the army to attack Asgard. That's a great destination to reach. Kratos never saw himself leading an army again, but the journey itself to get there, I don't know, I'm just not into it. Like I said, this is the Atreus story. Atreus drives the plot. There's actually this great moment where after we find out Tyr isn't who we thought he was, and Brock dies, Kratos and Atreus just leave. They're like, we're out, no more of this. And then you go back to your homeland and go hunting like everything is fine. I love this moment, and I wish there was a secret ending achievement somehow, where you just choose to never go back and let the world burn. Missed opportunity. Like the last game, the best moments for Kratos is when he's doing something that reminds him of his much more interesting adventures from the other games. He talks to Mimir about his brother Deimos, and when he's forced to strangle Heimdall to death, hearing him say monster as his final word, his eyes turning black, is a powerful moment because it brings us back to the person Kratos is on the inside, that darkness that he's trying his hardest to leave behind him. That's probably the most effective moment in the whole game.
You know what? I'm not even gonna lie, this really is one of the best moments in God of War Ragnarok, and easily one of the best boss fights in the game too.
I have been falling back to my ways.
Heimdall is a very God of War 3 style boss, super arrogant, teasing Kratos, pushing him to the limits of his patience, and near the end of the fight when you think you've won, Kratos rushes in and that old God of War fan in me was screaming for him to just rip his head off. That's what I wanted. I got really excited. That's the darkness of the old Kratos that's inside me. But he only impales his arm, pinning him to the wall, giving him a chance to surrender. The adrenaline was pumping through me and I sat there anxiously waiting to see what would happen next. I tried to calm myself as Kratos was, resisting the urge to kill him. I was trying to take the higher path with Kratos. When Heimdall refuses to yield, threatening Atreus, Kratos rips his arm off. A brutal punishment for disobedience, but still not murder. He's doing whatever he can to refrain from killing another god. But when Heimdall comes at him again, Kratos understands that there is no other option, suffocating the life out of Heimdall, giving him some kind of victory by revealing to him the Kratos that he was and probably always will be deep down. This is great stuff. A game centered around these themes would make me very happy.
I actually would be interested in an idea like that, where a game, centered around Kratos explored these kind of themes that you said right here. So yeah, I'm gonna give you props for this one. Once again, this is a very good point, a very good take right here under the mail. That's all I'm gonna say. I wholeheartedly 100% agree with you.
Sadly, most of the game's story is centered around our unlikable son that fucks everything up and all the side characters, eventually ending with us waging war on Asgard to save the realms, and it's all just kinda okay. It's a noble cause, but it wasn't very exciting by this point.
And you went back to hating on Atreus once again. Oh my god, under the mail. You just can't keep his name out your mouth for 1 second. If it's not Atreus, it's God of War 1 and you sucking it off. If it's not that, it's Doom Eternal and you sucking it off and saying how every FPS should be like it, and then backpedaling and being like, oh, well, I just wish they would just take ideas from it and the developers should listen to what I say. If it ain't that, then it's Streets of Rage 4. If it's not Streets of Rage 4, it's Resident Evil 1 and its puzzles and level design and how it's the perfect survival horror and yada yada yada. Under the mayo, man. We just can't catch a break when it comes to you, huh?
The fights in Asgard to get to the end are pretty unremarkable, and I think I was just getting tired of the combat by that point, so there's that too. The Odin and Thor boss fights are genuinely fun, but they're spoiled by one too many checkpoints. And as we know, checkpoints spawn you with full resources, so you can empty 6 runic attacks into them right away when you load a checkpoint. It makes the fights less interesting and challenging than they could have been. The best part of the final chapter is seeing Kratos become the general. Seeing everyone refer to him as their leader is a moving scene, because Kratos never saw himself taking this position again, and now the whole world is depending on him for their survival, instead of him being on a mission that destroys the world like he was in God of War 3. It's great character development. It's why I ultimately like this game's story a little more than 2018's, because despite all the terrible focus on Atreus, by the end, Kratos is in a very interesting place, and I like that. He says goodbye to his son in a scene that is incredibly touching. It almost brought a tear to my eye. So where does that leave us? The story of Ragnarok is over. It's a huge game. It was enough story for 2 games, but they wanted to wrap it all up in this one giant adventure. Was it too much? I don't know. I'm not used to having to play a game for a week to complete it, so I'm tempted to say yes. But I also did a lot of side content, spent hours in optional boss fights, and I intentionally put off finishing the campaign because of the Atreus levels. So maybe it's not too much. It probably depends on how you experience it. Personally, I feel like the ability to go on side missions detracts from the urgency of the plot. Odin is this great threat that we need to assemble an army to stop, and Kratos is upset about his son disappearing. But hey, why don't you relax for a bit and go run errands for ghosts? It's so weird. And I guess it also speaks to my preference for linear action games. I always felt the momentum of the story in the original God of War games, because you're going in one direction. You never took 5 hours out of your day to go fart around in a desert on your mission to kill Ares or Zeus. I did feel good about raising the dam and restoring water to the canyons, though. That was a side mission that felt like it had purpose and a real effect on the world. If only this was a linear action game and that was just part of the story. Now that I've beaten the campaign, seen the epilogue, found most of the Asgardian wreckage, beaten 8 of the Berserker boss fights, including a few fights versus the camera, I think I'm done. The wreckage fights have been very underwhelming. I feel no drive to find new gear. The remaining side quests involve a lot of empty wandering around, and yeah, I may go look for a few more boss fights in my spare time, but honestly, I'm just getting tired of the navigation. I already mentioned it, but the inability to fast travel at any time is really hindering this experience for me. I got lost in a part of Vanaheim up here, and I decided to make my way back to a gateway because I couldn't find one up here. Maybe there is one here and I just didn't find it. I couldn't find my way to the undiscovered area, so maybe it's up there. But because I didn't find one here, I had to run all the way back down the map, running in circles circles a couple times because I got turned around, and I spent like 10 minutes just running around in the jungle trying to get to a gateway. To do what? Go run around some more? That's when I officially soured on this game. It's so pretentious, they expect me to be happy retreading these dead environments looking for treasure or something, unable to fast travel anywhere unless I make a 5-minute trek back. It's insulting. But at least it's over. There is no reason at all to replay this game, so I can be done with it. I can look back on my fond memories of boss fights when I actually said, wow, I love this, and the touching moments that happen in the story, the beautiful environments, and I can try my hardest to forget nearly everything else. God of War Ragnarok was the most complicated game I've ever played or talked about. It is better than 2018 in many ways. I'd say it's a better game overall. But the major flaws this game has in certain areas, combined with the incredibly bloated campaign story moments with unskippable walkie-talkie cutscenes and 5 hours of Atreus missions, are, in my opinion, unforgivable. The good stuff keeps me from saying it's a bad game. Hell, in the end, I never even said the last game was bad. It just had a lot of bad stuff in it. This game isn't bad either. It's half really good and half really bad. The good stuff is better than it was in 2018, but the bad stuff is way worse. The incredible potential this game shows is brought down at nearly every turn, and that's what I call ruined. Thank you for watching this video. It's been an emotional ride. Let's hope the next God of War game goes in a different direction. I don't think I can take another one of these.
You know, it'd be so darn funny if God of War 6 was like a first-person shooter or something with like infinite ammo, and also there was no resource managing anything. You also restored health by doing glory kills and showering in your enemy's blood like an ultra kill. That would really tick UnderTheMayo off. Hey, he said he wanted to go in a new direction. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to have a sense of humor here. But man, what do we learn today? Well, apparently God of War Ragnarok and God of War 2018 are not bad games. You know, UnderTheMayo never said they're bad. But the bad stuff clearly outweighs the positive so much that he doesn't want to go back and replay God of War Ragnarok because of the Atreus sections and all that. The story beat moments, the constant downtime. Oh no. A lot of the bad stuff is way worse in here than it was in 2018. But, you know, it's the good parts are still keeping him from calling it a bad game, you know. He's not even calling the game mediocre or anything like that. He could say that, you know, because it's half good, half bad. He could say it's mediocre or average, but no. I guess he just doesn't want to get flack for outright calling the game bad. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is UnderTheMayo for you guys. So, he's still a hypocrite, man. I don't even get it, man. He's still a freaking hypocrite. Now, to be honest, he did come up with some very good points in this video instead of Synthetic Man. Not only that, he praised this game a lot more than Synthetic Man ever could. And just thank the Lord there was no dumb woke argument or nothing like that regarding Freya or any of the black characters and stuff in here. I honestly don't know why Synthetic Man ever came up with this stuff. But then again, his channel centers around talking about those things for some odd reason. But yeah, with that being said, you guys already know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe. This is me, Mitsuni Mika. I hope you all have a blessed day, and I hope you all have a blessed Christmas and blessed rest of this week, you know. Enjoy the holidays. Spend time with your family. Alright? And I hope you all have a blessed night. Hit the like button and subscribe. Comment down below, you know, and dislike the video if you dislike it. This is me, Mitsuni Mika. I'm out.
I've been counting down the days to get out.